Marius Els. In some Disney live-action movies, you'd see humans and wild animals doing some cool stuff together, like going on adventures and just being besties. But even after watching such movies, you'd still have it at the back of your mind that this isn't real and can never happen. Well, Marius Els might disagree with you because he recreated the real-life version of such Disney movies by adopting a 2,000-pound hippo and naming him Humphrey. The South African farmer, whose sense of danger was about as sharp as a butter knife, raised the apex predator from a calf, fed him, bathed him, and even swam with him in his private lake. He truly believed Humphrey was just a big, lovable aquatic teddy bear and practically treated the animal like a son. Except this son is a moody, territorial tank with a bite force that could crush a watermelon like a grape and tusks that could impale a rhino. Everyone warned Marius of the dangers of having a hippo as a pet, especially the fact that they kill more people annually than lions and other African predators combined. But he ignored all these warnings and was convinced Humphrey was special. And he was right. Humphrey was specially skilled at turning his dad into a human chew toy. One day, Humphrey decided he was done playing games. Maybe he didn't like the food that day, or maybe he just remembered he was a wild animal and not a lapdog. Either way, Humphrey went full hippo and attacked Marius, mauling him with his massive jaws. Marius was found later in the river, his body crushed and disfigured as if he had been tossed around like a rag doll. The very animal he'd raised with so much love turned out to be his downfall. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you, literally. Steve Irwin. If you were a fan of Tarzan growing up, then you would literally understand the appeal this man had. Steve Irwin was literally the daredevil of the animal kingdom and had wrestled and captured so many crocodiles that he was nicknamed Crocodile Hunter. He stared down venomous snakes and even charmed the pants off of Komodo dragons. You'd think there wasn't a creature on Earth that could surprise him. But on a sunny day in September 2006 in the clear waters of the Great Barrier Reef, Steve met his match. Not in the jaws of a crocodile, but in the seemingly harmless tail of a stingray. Now, stingrays aren't exactly the bad boys of the ocean. They're more like the shy guys who prefer to stay out of trouble. But then, cornered or stepped on, they've got a stinger in their tail that packs a punch. While filming for a new show, Steve swam above a stingray, a move that might have seemed routine to him, but this stingray didn't get the memo about Steve being everyone's favorite wildlife warrior. Startled and feeling threatened, it whipped its barbed tail and struck Steve right in the chest, piercing his heart with venom. As the stingray swam away, Steve's crew quickly rushed to get him out of the water and tried to save him, but his injuries were fatal and he died a few hours later in the hospital. Kellyanne Wall. So, one of your classmates is always bragging about owning a pet monkey, and so you got fed up with all his talk and decided to literally out-pet his pet. You convince your parents that you want your own pet, and instead of getting the regular dog, cat, rabbit, or hamster, you opt for a literal bear, because that's the only way to stand out. Sounds like a dumb idea, right? Well, not according to Kellyanne Wall's bizarre idea of what makes a great pet was a 350-pound bear. As if owning an apex predator wasn't enough of a risk, she even named him Teddy because nothing says cuddly companion like a creature that could rip your face off in 2 seconds flat. For years, Kelly lived with Teddy and a few other wild animals like a real-life Dr. Dolittle, except she couldn't speak bear language. She treated the bear like any regular pet, letting him roam around in a fenced area of her yard. But on a fateful day in 2009, Kelly made the kind of mistake that's reserved for people who skipped biology class. She decided to clean Teddy's cage while he was still in it. Now, bears aren't known for their house manners, and Teddy was no exception. As Kelly turned her back to clean up, Teddy decided he wasn't a fan of this new room service arrangement. He lunged at Kelly, knocking her to the ground with the kind of force that only a 350-pound bear could muster. He mauled her to death in a matter of seconds, his powerful jaws making quick work of his unsuspecting owner. The bear didn't get to enjoy its newfound freedom for long. long. The authorities, following the classic shoot first, ask questions never policy when it comes to rampaging bears, put him down on the spot. Jose Monsalves. The incident that led to the demise of Jose Monsalves is a classic case of the hunter becomes the hunted. So one sunny Saturday in August 2017, the 46-year-old Argentinian trophy hunter Jose Monsalves decided to organize a safari visit to a private wildlife park in Namibia. However, Jose wasn't there to marvel at the elephants. He was there to hunt one. But in a twist of fate and a serious miscalculation of how stealthy a 12,000-pound animal can be, Jose found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. As he positioned for the perfect shot, an elephant, clearly unimpressed with Jose's presence and his plans to turn one of its family members into a wall ornament, decided to take matters into its own trunk. Before Jose could fire his rifle, the elephant charged at him with the grace of a ballerina and the power of a bulldozer. It trampled Jose to death in what can only be described as the ultimate act of nature's poetic justice. When the dust settled, Jose's body was found crushed under the weight of the elephant's revenge, flattened in a way that suggested the elephant wanted to make sure he wouldn't be getting up for a second round. The safari team could only look on, helplessly realizing that this wasn't the kind of big game hunting Jose had in mind. The Argentinian trophy hunter came to bag the next big game, but instead, the game bagged him. Taylor Mitchell. You've probably been in a situation where you got overwhelmed, maybe from working on a complex physics problem or from arguing with your partner, and you had to take a much-needed walk to clear your head and think straight. Taylor Mitchell also tried the same approach, but instead of coming back home with a clear head, she never came back, literally. In October 2009, the 19-year-old upcoming singer from Canada was on tour in Nova Scotia when she decided to take a break from her tour to enjoy a solo hike through Cape Breton Highlands National Park. While she was probably looking for a bit of inspiration among the trees, she found a pack of wild coyotes with a serious case of the munchies eyeing her like she was the special on the woodland menu. Now, coyotes don't usually mess with humans. They're more into raiding garbage cans than staging a horror movie reenactment, but these coyotes must have decided they were auditioning for the lead roles in nature's most terrifying predators. They snapped at her, showing a level of aggression rarely seen in these animals. Taylor tried to fight them off, but when a whole pack of coyotes decides that you're the appetizer, main course, and dessert, there's not much you can do. They bit, claw, and mauled, turning that peaceful trail into a gruesome scene straight out of a wildlife nightmare. By the time other hikers arrived to help, Taylor had been critically injured. Despite being airlifted to the hospital, the coyotes had already, quite literally, made their mark. She died from her injuries, leaving behind more than just her music. Surender Singh Bhajua. Alright, so it's a bustling day in New Delhi, India, and as usual, the streets are filled with people and chaos, including traffic, street vendors, and, as it turns out, lots of monkeys. But not the cute, curious types you see in the movies. These were rhesus macaques, little furry troublemakers with an appetite for mischief, and they roam the streets of India in groups, causing chaos, snatching food, and generally behaving like they own the place. On this fateful day, they decided to pay Surender Singh Bhajua, the deputy mayor of New Delhi, a visit. As poor Bhajua stood on his balcony enjoying a cup of tea and probably contemplating his next political move, they stormed the balcony like it was a banana plantation and attacked Bhajua like he was the banana tree. The man was caught completely off guard, and as he tried to fend the monkeys off, he misstepped, lost his balance, and fell from the first-floor balcony. Sadly, during his fall, he broke his neck and spine. Once the deed was done, the monkeys scampered off, probably high-fiving each other and planning their next act of urban guerrilla warfare. Dawn Brancha. If you've ever been to or seen a Beyoncé concert, then you know that backup dancers and a great dance routine are part of what makes any performance spectacular. Well, this was the same with Dawn Brancha, except she wasn't performing on stage with a group of backup singers, but doing stunts with a breathing, living killer whale. You see, Dawn was a seasoned trainer at SeaWorld, known for her bond with the park's orca named Tilikum. Dawn and Tilikum usually performed stunts together for people to watch, but one day in 2010, things took a different turn. On the day of the performance, Dawn confidently positioned herself at the edge of the pool, smiling and waving as Tilikum circled nearby. The crowd is on the edge of their seats waiting for the next big trick. She leaned over the pool to interact with Tilikum, but the predator decided he had enough of the daily routine, grabbed her ponytail, and dragged her into the water with the force of a hungry hippo. The audience watched in horror as Tilikum began to thrash Dawn around, holding her down and then dragging her back up like a cat playing with its prey. Despite her training and experience, Dawn was no match for a 6-ton predator. Even other trainers tried to help by sounding alarms and throwing in nets, but Tilikum wasn't letting go. By the time they finally managed to separate them, it was too late for Dawn. Her spinal cord was severed, her jawbone and ribs were fractured, her scalp was completely torn off from her head, her left arm was torn off, and her left knee had been dislocated. She was declared dead when her poor limp body was finally recovered from the pool. Joseph Bruno Slinsky. Just imagine being deep in the jungles of Myanmar, where everything either bites, stings, or wants to kill you in some horribly creative way. This is where Joseph Bruno Slinsky, a renowned snake expert, felt right at home. You see, this guy loved snakes, especially the deadly ones. While most people would think twice before getting too close to a highly venomous creature, it's just another Tuesday for Joseph. On September 11th, 2001, while most of the world was gripped by news of tragedy elsewhere, Joseph had his own personal crisis in the jungle. He was sorting through a bag of snakes with his team when he reached in and pulled out a juvenile crate, a small but incredibly deadly snake. Now, this wouldn't be a problem for someone of Joseph's experience, but this particular crate had a bone to pick. Before he could react, the snake lashed out and sank its tiny fangs into his finger. At first, he literally tried to brush it off like you would brush dirt off your shoe. He was the snake guy after all. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that this wasn't just a love bite. Crates are known for their potent neurotoxic venom that slowly shuts down the victim's nervous system, leading to paralysis and eventually death. His team could only watch as the venom began to take effect. There were no anti-venoms nearby, no miracle cures in the jungle, just the slow, cruel realization that even the best snake expert can't charm his way out of a crate bite. After hours of agony and paralysis setting in, Joseph slipped into the cold hands of death. While all this commotion was going on, the crate quietly slithered off into the jungle, probably feeling pretty satisfied with itself for having taken down a world-renowned snake expert. Diane Whipple. So, it's a regular day in a San Francisco apartment building where residents are more worried about the lack of parking spaces than potential dog attacks. Diane Whipple, a lacrosse coach with a promising future, was coming home with her groceries, probably thinking about dinner plans. What she didn't know was that down the hall, a pair of hulking Presa Canario dogs, each weighing as much as a fully loaded suitcase, were about to turn her day into a living nightmare. The dogs, named Bane and Hera, weren't your typical friendly furballs. These were beasts trained more for intimidation than companionship. Owned by a couple with a bizarre taste in pets, these dogs were a cocktail of muscle and menace, and they didn't exactly have a reputation for being friendly neighbors. Well, in January 2001, as Diane passed by their door, Bane somehow slipped free. What followed was a horror show straight out of a thriller movie. The dog lunged at Diane, attacking with a ferocity that would make even the most hardened dog trainers shudder. Diane tried to fend off the massive dog, but it was like trying to stop a freight train with a broom. Bane, soon joined by Hera, turned the hallway into a bloodbath. They mauled her relentlessly, biting, tearing, and overpowering her in a terrifying frenzy that left her with catastrophic injuries. When the neighbors heard the bone-chilling screams from the poor girl, they all rushed out to help, but it was already too late. Catherine Chapel. Now, if you have ever gone on a safari, you'd know that the most thrilling moments are probably when you see all the majestic wild animals up close and personally. Well, nobody actually plans on becoming a snack for one of those wild beasts, but unfortunately, poor Catherine was on the lunch menu that day. So basically, on June 1st, 2015, Catherine Chapel was part of a safari, and her major goal was to capture some stunning wildlife photos. In a classic mistake that cost her her shoulder and life, Catherine rolled down her window while they were driving really close to the lions to get a better shot. out. Apparently, the lion assumed it was an invitation to take a bite out of her flesh and promptly bit her on the shoulder. As she was still screaming from the shock and fear, the lion sprung back up again and bit her the second time, but this time it completely tore off the flesh from her left shoulder. The crazy lion ran off with her shoulder in its mouth, probably heading back to feed the kids, while poor Catherine was busy dying from shock and excessive blood loss. Sadly, she passed away before she could even make it to the hospital to get any real help. Padma Birua. So, Padma Birua was a 54-year-old farmer from Bhajua, a river island in Assam, India. One early morning in February 2024, he was out as usual to tend to his crops. While he was at it, he stumbled upon a wild rhinoceros that had wandered out of Kaziranga National Park, probably in search of food or exploring new territory. Now, rhinos might look like they're just oversized prehistoric cows, but when they feel threatened, they basically turn into nature's version of an angry armored truck. Unfortunately for Padma, the rhino was not in the mood for a friendly meet and greet. It either felt territorial or just plain irritable when it saw Padma. Deciding Padma was a bit too close for comfort, it lowered its head, snorted like a disgruntled sumo wrestler, and charged at the poor farmer. Padma tried to get out of the way, but let's face it, when a 2-ton rhino is coming at you like it's in a hurry for happy hour, you're not gonna win that race. The rhino gored him with its horn and then, just to make sure Padma got the message, trampled him till he couldn't even move again. He died on the spot while the rhino, probably with a smirk on its face, sauntered off into the bush. Timothy Treadwell. When you start a career or a business and fail, you'd probably feel bad for a while and then try to start something else, or maybe look for ways to revive your failed business plan. Well, according to Timothy Treadwell, the plan for reviving his failed acting career was just batshit crazy. Timothy literally woke up one morning and decided that the best way to draw fame and money to his name was to pack up his entire life and move in with some grizzly bears in Alaska's Katmai National Park. He probably thought he was some kind of grizzly bear version of Tarzan. Well, minus the great survival instincts. Not only did this guy have no single educational background or experience with bears, but he had never even spent a day in his life living in the outdoors before. So technically, all he had was a camera and a very questionable sense of danger. He even got up close and personal with the grizzlies, giving them cute names like Mr. Chocolate and Wendy, as if you were dealing with a bunch of furry Disney characters rather than apex predators capable of turning him into a human chew toy. He stayed there for 13 years, documenting his experience on film, and would even call himself the Bear Whisperer. Well, on October 2003, things took a very grisly turn when Treadwell and his girlfriend stayed in the park later than usual. The thing now, though, is that during this period, bears were usually at their hungriest, looking for food and trying to fatten up for the winter. Unfortunately, the bear wandered into their campsite and Treadwell was on the menu. In true bear fashion, the animal tore both Treadwell and his girlfriend apart limb by limb. By the time the park rangers arrived at the scene, Treadwell and his girlfriend were already in the digestive tracts of the bears. It was a tragic, predictable end to Treadwell's ill-fated love affair with the grizzlies.